Hey guys, it's Luke here, and today I wanted to do a reaction video because someone sent me this video. Don't start learning Japanese kanji. 3 reasons why you should not start. And I'll post a link to the original video in the description box below. But the reason why I wanted to go over this is because while I think a lot of points are covered, also I think there's some quite big misunderstandings in what it's like for someone from a Western background learning a language with kanji or Hanzi. A background about me: I don't know any Japanese, but I've taught myself both Mandarin and Cantonese Chinese, and a big part of that was learning the Chinese characters. So this is the video. Don't start learning Japanese kanji, and I'm going to be doing a reaction video to this. Again, quick disclaimer before I start, I don't have anything against the YouTuber. I've never even heard of her before today, and I'm not doing this to try and criticize her. In fact, having a quick listen, I think she speaks English very, very well. So obviously she knows what she's talking about with regards to language learning, but I still think coming from a native Japanese speaker, there was perhaps a few things that she might have misunderstood or not really considered. Coming from someone who's spent the time to learn thousands of Chinese characters, as someone who's read Chinese novels, I want to give you my opinion on what do I agree with and what I don't agree with. So this is my first time doing a reaction video. Let me know if you liked it, and let's get started.
So 2021, do you really want to be able to speak Japanese this year?
No. Maybe next year.
Yes. If it's yes, please watch this video until the end. Okay, so today I'd like to tell you 3 reasons why you should stop learning Japanese letter, which is hiragana, katakana, kanji, if you really want to achieve this year to be able to speak Japanese.
So they're not letters. That's the first thing. Japanese is made up of 2 syllabaries, which is symbols that equate to a sound or a syllable, which is the hiragana and katakana, and kanji, which means Chinese character, or Hanzi in Chinese, is not a letter at all. It's nothing to do with sound. It's a logograph. So it's based on meaning, not pronunciation. Even though there is some sound components in that. If you want to learn more, then you can check out my video on characters.
So, my name is Terumi. I couldn't speak English, anything, just 5 years ago. But now I can speak English, German, and Greek. Why I could improve my speaking skill? Because I stopped doing this. So today, 3 reasons I'm going to tell you why you should stop doing hiragana, katakana, kanji, because you want to be able to speak Japanese. So reason one, 7 years old Japanese children, they go to the elementary school, they start learning hiragana, katakana, kanji.
Okay.
So people believe this is a first step to learn Japanese, but it's not. They are actually already fluent in Japanese. So this is the point. When you decide to actually become a Japanese speaker, you should stop doing letter first. So the reason 1 is children become fluent without writing and reading skills.
So there's an assumption here that learning language as a child and an adult is the same. And while I think I do agree on a fundamental level, I think learning a language when you're requiring, new sounds and a lot of that stuff, then effectively, we're absorbing it, we're getting a lot of input, and I think it is the same. But on many levels, it's different. Now, one thing we have as an adult, which is really crucial in learning a foreign language, which actually gives us a head up from children, is we have the ability to critically think. We have the ability to assess, we have the ability to analyze, and we have the ability to read. So reading as an adult to learn a foreign language is an absolutely great way, and one of the best ways to learn new words. In fact, there's countless studies. If you just go onto Google Scholar and have a quick Google search, you can see loads of studies associating reading ability to fluency and ability to articulate yourself in another language and your native language. So anything that boosts literary rates tends to boost fluency as well. And reading in a foreign language is shown to be one of the best ways to acquire new words.
Okay, so you cannot speak Japanese, but you start going to the elementary school with English. So what is a huge difference is you, as an English speaker, start learning suddenly letter without any speaking skill. But Japanese 7 years old elementary school students, they already can speak Japanese fluently and they start learning the letters. So which means what I want to tell you here is you have to be able to speak Japanese first, then learning kanji.
So that's actually quite an interesting point. So focusing on listening and picking up and the oral side of it first in the sounds, and then moving on to kanji. So I think something that's worth distincting is hiragana and katakana. I don't speak Japanese. I think they're 50 each, whereas the kanji is, talking about thousands. So learning the hiragana and katakana, or the kana, can tend to be done in, a little time as a day or a weekend if we're talking about that. And, it's going to be very, very useful in terms of boosting your comprehension of Japanese from what I understand. So doing that and then learning to focus on listening after makes a lot of sense to me, because then you can really focus on boosting your listening comprehension.
Okay, so it's a huge mistake. Especially, we have thousands of letters. So try touch kanji. After the thousands of letters, you actually speak? No way. It's going to take whole elementary school year, junior high school, and high school, and maybe university. So when are you going to be a Japanese speaker?
And this is, I think, the first thing that I wanted to say, and this is where I first started to think one of the big differences and one of the assumptions that she has as a native Japanese speaker is she's taking the assumption that you're going to be learning characters, Chinese characters, or kanji or Hanzi in the same way that a native speaker learns, which is just absurd. So in schools, they rely completely on rote memorization. It's the same in China and Taiwan. This is a very bad way to learn. If you use your brain, you analyze it, you look at mnemonics, you look at the liu shu and analyze the different types of characters, you can memorize them so much easier. So the idea that it's going to take years and years and years and years and years is absurd. I've only been learning Chinese for 2.5 years for Mandarin Chinese, and I've already read over 30 books. So the idea that it takes from, junior school right the way up to university to be able to get your reading up to a good level, I think is absolutely absurd, because that is just not true if you use a method that actually works and it's not just rote memorization.
Stop. Writing is later. You're going to start.
And this is point number 2. So she said writing. And I think there's a big distinction between writing and reading. So one of the other things she assumes in this video is that learning the kanji or learning the kana is equal to learning how to write them. So learning to comprehend and read the characters is going to offer so many benefits in terms of understanding menus, being able to text with your friends, read YouTube subtitles, Netflix subtitles, movie subtitles, comic books, manga, movies, TV shows, anime, you name it. It gives you access to so much native content if you can just read them. Whereas writing them in today's day and age with computers, with cell phones, it's not actually that useful, and it takes a lot longer. So in terms of bang for your buck, learning to read and comprehend the characters is going to give you huge amounts of benefit, whereas learning to write at least thousands and thousands of characters, I think, is a waste of time, because realistically you're not going to use it, and the time investment is completely disproportionate, which is what she's indicating to in this video, which I do completely agree with that side of it, but you can still learn to read them with a much smaller time investment, and learning to write maybe 200 to 300, which doesn't take as long as you'd think. You can do it in a week or 2 if you use the correct method, can massively increase your understanding of how the characters work, which can mean you can pick them up organically through reading and watching with subtitles. In fact, if you Google, I think it's called SLS, same language subtitles, there's actually a lot of proven research in linguistics at the moment which show watching a show in your target language with the subtitles on massively increases literacy rates. And they've done this with different experiments, for example, putting subtitles on songs in Hindi and they've actually seen literacy rates increase massively. So if you just get the ball rolling and learn a few hundred characters in terms of how to recognize them when you're watching TV shows and put the subtitles on, you're going to start picking it up organically, and it's going to snowball from there, and that's going to really be powerful in terms of learning more words and increasing your vocabulary.
Communication part first, then you become like elementary school Japanese children and start doing the letters. Okay.
So yeah, don't learn like elementary Japanese children. It's a terrible method. Rote memorization is just slow and inefficient.
So, reason 2. Because Japanese letters are more than 2,500. So,
okay.
As I said, reason 1, if you touch kanji, you're going to spend almost more than 10 years easily. So here.
Again, that's completely absurd. If you learn it like a Japanese person learns them at school, maybe it'd take 10 years. But there's countless examples of people on the internet and online and in Japan and in China that have learned how to read in a lot less than that. After learning Mandarin Chinese, I was fighting my way through books after only 6 months and using things like e-tools and pop-up dictionaries, but I could still read it. And there's no reason why it has to take you 10 years to learn characters. That is absurd. If you're focusing on reading and use the right methods, then it doesn't need to take that long, which means most of the arguments in this video then don't really make any sense. So you should learn them, just not how to write them.
Here is a kanji 2,500. Okay. Kanji, Japanese kanji, I'm sure it's like you're fascinated about because it's something that's different. So maybe kanji is beautiful. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm really, proud that I'm Japanese and I can understand almost everything. But almost. It's like you, as a native English speaker, doesn't mean you can spell it, all the letters, all the vocabulary perfectly, right? Everybody.
So she's equating being able to write in Japanese to being able to spell in English, which makes sense. And then she's then saying, because, it doesn't matter if you can spell in English, you can still function fine. But there's a big difference. You're not illiterate in English, you can read, and she can read English. When she's giving advice saying, don't spend all this time on the writing system, because I didn't, she could already read English when she started. And if you're starting from zero learning as a Japanese learner or a Chinese learner, you can't read the script. So that is such a fundamental difference that she doesn't necessarily understand from the perspective of a native speaker.
Make mistakes sometimes, spelling. Of course, as a Japanese, I sometimes don't remember the kanji. I sometimes don't remember what is this pronunciation.
I can't spell very well.
2,500,
So obviously not that important.
Okay, so one of the most difficult things in learning Japanese, if you start kanji, you don't have time to spend for the training to speak. So that's the reason 2,500 kanji, you should stop doing this.
So spending time on the kanji and reading increases spoken fluency as well. It improves your vocabulary, improves your awareness of the grammar if combined with other stuff as well. So if you're just learning how to write, kanji out in a practice book, if you want to focus on that, fine, but it's not going to get you very far in terms of written ability, in terms of spoken ability and fluency. But on the flip side, if you read, it's going to help with your reading ability, it's going to help with your grammar, it's going to help with your vocab, and therefore it's going to help with your speaking as well. So some of the topics that I can talk about now, if I want to speak to my friends about space and black holes and, some concepts in physics, and I can now do that in Chinese thanks to the fact that I've read books in Chinese. I've read The Three-Body Problem, the sci-fi trilogy about space exhibition. I've read A Brief History of Time in Chinese. So I've picked up this vocabulary which allow me to speak about these topics because I've read about them. So reading and picking up vocab about a certain topic is one of the best ways to learn how to speak about that topic. So splitting up speaking and practicing the writing system is really, I think, it's elements of how we learn in school, and it's the building block approach where I'd master this, then I master that, then I master this, then I master that. Learning a language doesn't work like that. In reality, it's a lot more hazy. You kind of just focus a lot on input, you focus a lot on listening, you focus a lot on reading, and you will slowly acquire everything using a holistic process. You acquire skills across the board. So it's not I learn how to speak or I write. You can watch a TV show with subtitles, you improve your listening, you improve your reading, and therefore you improve your spoken fluency as well. And then later you can practice speaking with partners as well.
Haven't started learning Japanese, you will never start these things, okay? You become like children. You start speaking already, you are like quite fluent in Japanese like children, and then after that, go to the elementary school, they start learning kanji. So just please follow, like Japanese children, they start communicating, after that, they start doing these most difficult things, kanji. Okay, so reason 3. Reason 3 is you better use translation apps. So we are here, 2021, especially you are not children. You are adult, maybe over 30, over 40, over 50, whatever. You are adult. And you have a limited time. You are working. You have to do something else. You have a family, and you have a limited time.
The time constraints one of the
almost impossible to go to the Japanese elementary school to do everyday kanji, right? And why don't use language apps to just translate? Because I understand you want to understand the kanji. I understand you want to read the book, but this is a reality. You need over 10 years plus. You need to do it every day like elementary school or junior high school student. Otherwise, you can't complete this 2,500 kanji. This is a reality. Otherwise, you actually become like almost AI robot to actually put the tips and, you can really speak today. But unfortunately, we don't have this technology yet. So which means either you really want to read and then write down, or either you want to speak. I think speaking is more important. First of all, even you can read some letters. If you cannot speak at all, in front of you, you have a Japanese person. You cannot communicate at all, or you cannot read a book. Which one is more serious problem?
It's actually quite funny. It reminds me of a story when I was in Japan. So as someone who's, again, studied Chinese but doesn't speak any Japanese, one of the ways that I actually communicated with Japanese people when I was in Japan was writing down Chinese characters because, again, the characters are shared across Chinese and Japanese. So it's not perfect. And I definitely agree, learning to speak would have been a lot more useful, but I don't know Japanese. I'm not learning Japanese. I only knew Chinese. So, writing down characters was actually able to get some communication. Yeah, but no, overall, yeah, that makes sense.
Definitely. You can't communicate at all will be much problematic, especially if you want to join the community, if you want to work together, if you want to have more deeper relationship. Communication is more important.
So again, joining a community, again, this is one of the biggest arguments I think for learning the script. Imagine trying to integrate into a group of friends in England or in the UK, but being completely illiterate. So, you think you've got WhatsApp, you've got Facebook, you've got Instagram. I couldn't have even found this video to watch if I can't read English. I don't know what the title says. I don't know what she's talking about, or I wouldn't have even got onto YouTube. I wouldn't have been able to use a keyboard. So the idea of integrating into a social group while being illiterate in that language, trust me, if you meet friends in another country, they're going to add you into a line group or a WhatsApp group, and they're going to all be texting in that language. If you can't understand the text, you can't understand what's going on. You can't organize events. So learning how to read, I think, is a pre-requirement to be able to integrate into a social group. And also it's going to provide you lots of opportunities to learn new words as well.
And than actually reading the text. Because we are human, right? It's better you actually use a language, translation apps to just translate immediately, so you don't need to learn the kanji so much, but you can really communicate fluently.
So I don't know why using translating apps would necessarily help you learn Japanese. I mean, I guess it depends what type. So if you can see my screen still, I've got things like pop-up dictionary, so you can translate single characters like that and use translate apps. Hey, look at that, look how easy that is. And then, okay, can I see there? Okay, well, it's pronounced tsu, it means next in a sequence. Okay. Or it means a number, so in this case it's saying it's got 236 views, and I can learn that and then go, okay, think of that in my head and move on. So using translation apps in this sense makes a lot of sense in terms of like pop-up dictionaries, and now there's so many online that are good for Chinese and for Japanese as well.
Believe me, why I could learn 3 languages these 5 years, English, Greek, and German, because I stopped focusing on the spelling. I more focusing on the speaking and pronunciation and communication, natural communication.
That makes sense, again, not to focus so much on the spelling, as long as you can read.
How to speak, how to actually interact with the people, my listening skill. This is more important as a human than actually I focus on the spelling, because I'm not elementary school student. So what about you? If you really feel that I really want to communicate with the Japanese, please stop doing this, because it's not effective for improving your speaking skills. Like a child, become like a child to be able to speak first and then learn the letter later. So what do you think? So please share with me your comment here. Okay, so thank you. ありがとうございました。またね。
So yeah, what do I think? I think she definitely speaks English very well for a Japanese person, so kudos to that. Using the language with real people, promoting real communication. Your language is a tool to communicate. It's not an art form, it's not a grammar exercise, so I really like that. Don't spend too long focusing on writing and spelling, focus on communication. Again, I completely agree with that. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think coming from a background, at least if Japan's anything like the UK, when you've got these very traditional skill block building sort of methods that focus a lot on grammar exercises, rote memorization and stuff like that, going to an approach like this where you speak a lot, and I think of other people in the community like Benny Lewis, it is such a huge improvement and you're going to notice a lot of gains. So I think it is a massive improvement from traditional methods, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best method. In my opinion, focusing more on input, you can naturally acquire new words in the language, and it's going to help you so much more. And then when you do come to speak later, you're going to have that strong base that you can use to speak. So the only reason I can speak about some of the topics that I can do is because I've had a lot of input in there, and it's hard to get the amount of words you need if you can't read. So if I was going to summarize the things that I disagree with in this video, that from her side, I think she made 3 assumptions that I don't quite agree with. So 1, learning the script equals learning how to write the script. Again, this isn't true. You can learn how to read it and it's going to take a lot less time. 2, learning to write takes 10 years because that's how long it took Japanese kids to learn. Again, I don't think this is true. We can use a lot smarter methods as adults. We can understand the etymology behind the character, why the character is written the way it is, and learn it smartly with mnemonics and through a lot of exposure through reading and also subtitling, same language subtitles, practice watching TV and that sort of thing. 3, is that she didn't focus on English spelling and she learned English just fine. So that might be true, but again, she's making the assumption that she didn't focus on the rank system, therefore you didn't have to, but she was literate in English, whereas if you start from learning Japanese or Chinese, you will be illiterate, which means you can't join social circles, you can't text your friends, you can't read subtitles, you can't read manga, and you can't read books. So that's my opinion. All in all, I think she speaks English very well, and I think it's coming from a good place. I just don't agree with some of the points. So hopefully you take this video for what it is, and that hopefully you realize I'm putting it out for education purposes, not as an attack on her. So thank you for watching. And again, if you have any comments or anything you disagree with what I've said, let me know, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.